Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Mike Muldoon podcast. And oh man, it's been tough. It's been a tough month. Bagel shop, third month in, and I think it's just August. It's a slower month where we live, and people travel a lot and they're on vacation. But man, it's been it really tests your patience. So I'm hoping things get better in September. But we're gonna be fine. It's a learning thing. You know, I've never done something like this before. You know, like I said, I'm a writer. My wife's a lawyer. Like I've never worked in a cafe. Never known how to make coffee. Nothing. I think I worked in a restaurant. I mentioned once before for like a week. I was 17. I got fired. I was never really good at serving people. So, but I think it's good, and we're learning things. But it's funny because I'm really suffering from something called anchoring bias right now. And it's basically, it's a psychological phenomenon where basically the first piece of information we receive is known as the anchor. And it really heavily influences our judgments and our decisions, right? So right now for me, it doesn't make a difference if this anchor is relevant or random or even absurd. It's just once it's in your mind, it kind of weighs down your thinking and frames everything that follows. So for instance, again, with my bagel shop, it's very easy for these anchoring biases to sort of quietly shape my fears and my decisions, because if you look at it, like the first week of sales can become the benchmark you measure every future against. So like our first few weeks, right? Because we just opened, we were slamming, right? And of course, so that becomes my norm, which means when it's not that way, obviously it creates fear. Or let's just say there was a competitor down the street. We don't really have one. We're very lucky right now, but we don't have one who suddenly has lower prices. That would make me doubt my value that I'm bringing, or, even reviews, maybe one bad review can feel louder than 20 good reviews. Supplier cost and payroll bills can stick in your mind as immovable reference points. I'll tell you right now, that's what it is sticking in my mind as an immovable reference point. And these can, these anchoring biases can really leave you feeling boxed in or anxious. And that's the power of the anchor. The first number, comment, or impression often influences how we think and what we should be doing afterwards. And that's what we're going to talk about today. See, that's the power of the anchor. The very first number, comment, or impression, or anything often influences, again, how we think long after it should. So Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, he basically explained it in Thinking Fast and Slow. He basically says people who were asked whether Gandhi was more than 114 years old when he died will give a much higher estimate of his age at death than people who were asked whether he was older than 35, because the anchor 114 or 35 changes perspectives even when people know it's ridiculous. Now, the thing is, the concept of anchoring bias was first demonstrated in 1974. There was these researchers who spun a wheel of fortune that landed on random numbers. Now, participants were then asked whether the percentage of African nations in the UN was higher or lower than the number, and finally estimate the actual percentage. Even though the number was random, it anchored people's responses. Those who saw 10 gave much lower estimates than those who saw 65. So you see what I mean? The anchoring by it gives you a reference point of what you're basically working off of. So since then, this research has really shown that anchors shape our outcomes in everything. From courtroom sentences, like judges gave harsher punishments when exposed to higher suggested numbers, to house valuations, right? Remember a couple of years ago with COVID, everything was insanely busy. When I bought my house, insanely crazy. Salary negotiations, even medical decisions. The thing is, an anchoring bias shows up in our everyday lives. Shopping, right? Retailers set high original prices, so the discounted price feels like a steal, right? You walk in and, normally $39.99, but today for $9.99, like, oh my God, well, it was $39.99. It was probably really just $9.99. They just jacked it up on you. Again, salary negotiations, right? The first number put on the table becomes the reference point. This is our starting point, right? In relationships, a first impression, whether positive or negative, anchors how we see somebody long after, right? So again, that doesn't necessarily mean that person is who we think they are, but it's how we're going to see them until that anchor changes. Even self-perception. early grades, job titles, or labels such as he's shy, he's gifted, he's strange, he's awkward, whatever it is, can anchor how we view our own abilities, shaping what we think is possible. Which, if you go back and you read my book, 5 Basic Keys to Living Successfully in Between, it's really important to understand that how people are labeling you does not necessarily make that who you are, and that can change for you. Now, there's upsides and downsides to anchors. Like most mental shortcuts, anchoring bias, it basically cuts both ways. One of the upsides is efficiency, right? Anchors can help us decide quickly in a complex world. On motivation, a positive anchor like a teacher calling you gifted can set a standard that you strive to live up to. But there's also a downside, manipulation, right? Marketers and salespeople use anchors to control perception of value, like we just talked about in the store, right? Oh, originally $49.99 or $39.99, only $9.99. They can also create a distorted sense of reality. Anchors can trap us into narrow thinking. Again, that's something I have to try to avoid right now as I'm going through this business, just feeling like, oh my God, it's ever going to be this. This is always going to cost me this. This is what it's going to be because I'm anchored to one thing. But I have to remind myself it's not true. It can also create missed opportunities, right? Old anchors, I'm not leadership material, can stop you from pursuing growth or pursuing new opportunities or new jobs. So the thing is, what we really want to do is we need to loosen these anchors. They work for us sometimes and sometimes they don't, right? We can't escape anchoring bias completely. It's hardwired into how we think, but we can spot it and we can adjust it. So what I would always say, just pause before deciding and ask, am I reacting to the first number or an impression I saw? Are there multiple anchors, right? Compare across before deciding. Maybe you're shopping for, people do something with vehicles, right? What actually is the price of that, right? They usually look at several different vehicles, the same vehicle, to kind of see what it is, to kind of get to work off of that instead of just being told, no, this is it. The other thing is try to flip that perspective. If someone else sets that anchor, set your own. For instance, by being the first to propose a new number in negotiation, somebody hits you lower, maybe you hit them higher. You set the thing is. But the thing is, anchors, aren't just obstacles for us. They can be tools. If you're somebody who works with people like I've done in the past, it can help people identify anchors that are shaping their lives and their beliefs and help them create new ones that serve them better. Again, one of the things I often talk about is I hate when I see parents or somebody looking at a young kid and saying, oh, you're so stupid, or you're so this, you're so that. You are creating an anchor there. You don't realize it. That parent does not realize. You think your child is a problem now? Wait till they're 18 and 19 years old and they're really giving you problems and you didn't realize it was your fault. You called them stupid. You called them an idiot. You told them they're never going to amount to anything. And they anchored to that. And that's what they lived off of. So if you're somebody right now who might be struggling with certain things in your life, go back and see, hey, who set that? Who programmed your self-conscious with this BS anchor in your life? And then let's work to fix that. Reframe these limiting anchors. Again, some of us are still anchored to old feedback. I'm bad at math. I'll never be good in public speaking. I'm not leadership material. I talked about this on one of my earlier podcasts a few years back. I had an art teacher, I swear to you, tell me one time I had to drop her art class because I couldn't draw. And for years, my automatic response was, when people said, can you draw? No, I can't draw. And it was only a few years ago that I realized that's why. She said to me, you can't draw. And anytime, it was an automatic response. I cannot draw. The truth of the matter is I'm not very good at drawing, but I wouldn't say I can't draw. I do have some employees who are really impressive with their drawing, but I was crazy when that dawned on me. It was an automatic response. So again, you might have some anchoring biases that were just pressed upon you by other people, and they don't have to be the way, okay? They don't have to be the way. So if you need to change something like that, just think of a moment that proves the opposite of your limiting belief. That time you did public speak, that time you did step up, that time you did ask for something, that becomes your new anchor, and that's how quickly it can change. Again, in my book, I talk a lot about this, but, use these positive anchors. Anchors aren't only numbers, they're also experiences. Recall a moment that you nailed a presentation or overcame a setback can ground you in confidence before your next challenge and also create that new anchor. Look, the thing is, anchors will always be part of how our mind works. It needs something. It needs to create and it needs to set something. And just the mind is a computer and it needs an answer. But the key is recognizing when they're steering us in the wrong direction. Again, as a business owner right now, I felt it myself. I talk about this, whether it's sales numbers, whether it's reviews, it's supply costs. It's easy to get stuck comparing everything to that first figure or impression. But the same is true in our personal lives. The good news, the awareness, we can loosen up the grip of those anchors and even replace them with ones that empower us and improve our lives. So for me, whether it's running a shop or for you or somebody out there maybe building confidence or stepping into leadership, the anchors you choose to hold onto can be the difference between feeling stuck and moving forward. And that's what I got for you today. Make sure you're paying attention. What are you anchored to? Is it serving you or is it not serving you? And then how do we rip it out of the ground, find a new one, and move on? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much again for tuning in for me. Thank you so much for tuning in for me. No, thank you so much for just tuning in. Please continue to, share your likes and your feedback. If you're on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening, please give me, reviews always help in the Apple world, I guess. And again, hope you get something from this. Sorry, sometimes I'm missing because, again, running this new shop. But we are getting there. So thank you so much for being with me. It is a Friday. I'm doing this very early morning in the basement of my shop right now where I've set up. And, it's going into the weekend. Be safe, be smart. And as always, I got nothing but love for you.